Be Me 33 marketing director. Married for 7 years to husband Eric, who was 35 and senior analyst at finance company, had strong feminist beliefs about equal partnership in marriage, didn't want traditional dynamic where wife supports husband's complacency, believed both partners should be equally ambitious and financially successful. Not one partner carrying the ambition for both. Eric had been at same company for 9 years. Competent analyst, but never particularly driven about climbing corporate ladder aggressively. Was content with his role, analyzing market trends, good work-life balance, and came home at reasonable hours every evening, consistently. Meanwhile, I'd been aggressively advancing my career, went from coordinator to director in 7 years through dedication and long hours, worked 60-plus hour weeks, extensively, always thinking about the next promotion and career advancement opportunities, constantly. I started feeling resentful that Eric seemed comfortable staying at the same level while I kept pushing myself forward professionally. Felt like I was carrying the ambition for both of us in our marriage. He was coasting while I was constantly striving. Had several difficult conversations with Eric about his lack of career drive and ambition over the past 2 years. He'd say he was happy with his current role and compensation, enjoyed his team, and didn't want the stress of senior management positions. This frustrated me deeply. Felt like he wasn't living up to his potential or contributing equally to our partnership financially. Posted on feminist forums about feeling resentful toward an unambitious husband who seemed content with career mediocrity. Got responses from other women who related to feeling like they were more driven and ambitious than male partners. One woman suggested withholding intimacy until the husband showed more career ambition and drive for professional advancement. She said if he's not meeting you as equal in professional achievement, he's not deserving of full partnership benefits and affection. This resonated with me strongly. Felt like Eric was getting all the benefits of marriage while not pushing himself professionally like I did. Had a serious conversation with Eric about my frustrations with his career stagnation and apparent lack of ambition or drive. Told him I needed him to be more of an equal partner by pursuing advancement and showing professional drive and ambition. He said he contributed financially with a good salary. We were comfortable. Didn't understand why his contentment was such a problem. I said it wasn't about money alone. It was about partnership. I needed someone equally ambitious, not someone coasting through my career. He looked hurt and asked what specifically I wanted him to do differently about his career, trajectory, and goals. I said I wanted him to pursue promotion to senior analyst or management level, so he was as driven and ambitious as me. He said those roles required 60 to 70-hour weeks and constant office politics. He had absolutely no interest in engaging daily. I said then he needed to find something he was interested in pursuing aggressively. I couldn't be the only ambitious one in marriage. Got more frustrated over following months as Eric continued in the same role without actively pursuing any advancement or promotions. Posted in feminist group about the situation, and one woman suggested making physical intimacy contingent on career progress and achievement. She said men respond to incentives and consequences. If a comfortable life doesn't motivate him, maybe losing intimacy will push him. This felt extreme initially, but I was desperate to motivate Eric to be a better partner by advancing professionally, like I had another serious conversation with Eric, telling him our intimacy life would be on hold until he pursued a significant raise or promotion. He looked absolutely shocked and asked if I was seriously withholding sex to force him to pursue job advancement he didn't want. I said I was setting boundaries about what I needed. An equal partner, someone who matched my professional ambition and drive. He said this felt manipulative and like punishing him for being content with his current role and satisfied work-life balance. I said if he saw it as punishment, maybe that revealed he knew he wasn't being an equal partner in our marriage financially. He was quiet for a very long time, then said he needed to think seriously about what this meant for our relationship long-term. The following weeks were tense and distant in our home. Eric slept in the guest room, and we barely spoke beyond basic logistics. He started working longer hours and seemed to be networking more based on evening meetings and events he mentioned attending. Part of me felt satisfied that Boundary was finally motivating him to take career advancement seriously after years of stagnation. After 6 weeks, Eric told me he'd applied for a senior analyst position at his company and was going through the interview process. Felt vindicated that setting clear boundaries had motivated him to pursue advancement he'd been avoiding for years. Told him I was proud he was finally stepping up and meeting me as an equal partner professionally and financially. He didn't respond with the enthusiasm I'd expected. Just said he'd let me know how the interview process went and when he'd hear back. 3 weeks later, Eric came home and said he'd been offered a senior analyst position with a 35% salary increase significantly. I was thrilled and told him this was exactly what our partnership needed. Him being as ambitious and financially successful as me, he said quietly that he'd accepted the position and would be starting in a new role in 2 weeks after the transition period. I moved toward him to celebrate and reconnect physically after 6 weeks of distance and separation I'd enforced in our home. He stepped back deliberately and said we needed to have a very serious conversation about our marriage and our future together. I felt confused because I'd gotten exactly what I'd asked for. Erica pursuing and achieving significant promotion and raise. He sat down and said, getting this promotion required an enormous amount of reflection about what I actually wanted from life and career. I realized that I was genuinely happy with my previous role, and you were asking me to be unhappy to meet your arbitrary standards. But I applied anyway because I thought maybe you were right that I was coasting and should push myself professionally harder. During the interview process, I spent enormous time thinking about whether this relationship actually made me happy anymore overall. And I realized that it doesn't make me happy that you've made your love and intimacy conditional on me meeting standards I never agreed to. Felt panic rising in my chest rapidly. This wasn't the conversation I'd expected after he got the significant promotion I'd pushed for. I said I just wanted you to be an equal partner in our marriage, to be as driven and successful as me professionally. He said, you wanted me to be like you. Exactly. To value the same things you value? To measure success your specific way. I don't value climbing the corporate ladder aggressively. I value time with you and reasonable work hours and actually enjoying my work. You've made it absolutely clear that those aren't the right values, that I'm an adequate partner if I'm content with my career level. This promotion you push me to pursue comes with 6 5-hour work week minimum and constant political maneuvering. I'll be miserable in this role I never wanted. But I did it because you made your acceptance of me conditional on career advancement. And in the process of pursuing it, I realized I don't want to be in a relationship where acceptance and love is conditional on performance. Started crying and said, I didn't mean to make you feel inadequate at all. I just wanted you to reach your full potential. He said, my potential in your eyes, and by your definition, not my own definition of what successful, satisfying life looks like for me. You've spent 2 years criticizing my contentment and 6 weeks withholding intimacy to force me to change into someone else. That's not an equal partnership. That's you trying to control me to match your vision of an ideal husband and partner. I said I was trying to push you to be a better version of yourself, to not settle for mediocrity when you're capable of so much more. He said you were trying to push me to be a different person entirely, someone who values career advancement over quality of life. I have never wanted a senior management role. I've been completely clear about that. But my preferences didn't matter to you at all. What mattered was your image of what our partnership should look like. Your definition of what equal actually means in marriage. Asked desperately what this meant for our marriage and future. If getting promotion meant we could rebuild intimacy and connection, he said, I filed for divorce. I'll be moving out this weekend to an apartment I've secured. Promotion starts a month after that at different companies. Felt like I'd been punched hard in the stomach. This was completely opposite of the outcome I'd been working toward for months. I said, you're leaving me after getting the promotion I pushed you to get after, finally meeting my standards for equal partnership. He said you pushed me to get a promotion to prove I was worthy of you. I got it to prove to myself I could do it, and in the process, realized I don't want to be with someone who makes love conditional on career performance and financial achievement. I've accepted a senior leadership role at a different company where I don't know anyone. I'll be miserable professionally. But at least divorced from you, maybe eventually I'll find someone who accepts me as I am instead of constantly pushing me to be a different person entirely. Begged him to reconsider decision. Said, I've been wrong about making intimacy conditional on promotion and career advancement. He said, yes, you were wrong about that specific tactic. But you've been wrong about bigger things for a much longer time. You've been wrong about what makes someone a good partner. What equality in marriage actually means between two people. You've treated my contentment as a character flaw, and my different values as inadequacy that needed to be fixed or corrected. I don't want to be with someone who sees me that way. Regardless of what job title I have or how much money I make. The following weekend, Eric moved out to an apartment he'd already secured closer to his new company location for an easier commute. Sat empty house, feeling devastated and confused about how pursuing equal partnership had ended our marriage completely. Posted in Feminist forum about what happened. Expecting support and sympathy for the situation, and Eric's extreme reaction got very mixed responses that challenged my entire approach to the situation over the past 2 years of our marriage. Several women said I'd been controlling and manipulative, trying to force my husband to pursue career advancement. He clearly didn't want to. One commented, equality doesn't mean both people have identical career ambitions and values. That's conformity, not equality. Another said, withholding intimacy to force behavior change is emotional abuse, not feminist empowerment or setting healthy boundaries. But others defended me strongly, saying, I deserve a partner who matches my drive and ambition professionally and financially. One said, you shouldn't have to settle for an unambitious man who is content with mediocrity. You were right to push him toward advancement. Another said he was being lazy and entitled, and you held him accountable appropriately. His leaving shows he couldn't handle equal partnership. This division in responses made me question whether I'd been right or completely wrong in my entire approach to Eric. Talked to my therapist about divorce and what had led to Eric leaving despite getting a promotion. I demanded. She asked me to describe what equal partnership meant to me and why Eric's career level had mattered so much to relationships. I explained that I needed a partner who was as ambitious and successful as me professionally, who matched my professional drive exactly. She asked why matching your specific career values was an absolute requirement for partnership equality in your marriage. I said because otherwise I was achieving more and working harder professionally, carrying the ambition for both of us in a relationship. She said, did Eric's contentment with his role mean he wasn't contributing equally to the relationship in other important ways? I was quiet because Eric had always done more than half of housework, was emotionally supportive, and consistently great with my family. She said, it sounds like you defined equality narrowly as matching your career ambition and drive exactly and dismissed all the ways Eric was contributing. That didn't fit your specific definition of what an equal partner looks like in marriage. This was a painful realization that maybe I'd been measuring equality by completely wrong metrics entirely for years. Started thinking back over 7 years of marriage and how I'd treated Eric's career, contentment, and different values. Had I been constantly critical and dismissive of his choices because they didn't match mine exactly? Had I made him feel like he was inadequate despite being a loving, supportive partner in every single other way? Had I prioritized my vision of successful partnership over his happiness and what he actually valued in life? Called Eric a few days later, hoping to talk through what therapist had helped me realize about my approach. He said he appreciated me calling, but he was absolutely firm in decision to divorce and move forward with his life. I said I realize I was wrong to make career advancement a condition of intimacy and acceptance in our marriage. He said yes. You were wrong about that specific thing. But the problem was much deeper and longer than just that ultimatum. You've been telling me for 2 years that my contentment was inadequate and that my values were fundamentally wrong. That 6 weeks of withholding intimacy was just the most explicit version of conditional acceptance you'd shown all along for years. I've spent years feeling like I was failing you by being content. Like I was defective for not wanting what you wanted. That's not a sustainable foundation for marriage. Regardless of whether you acknowledged specific tactics were wrong, now asked if there was any way to rebuild after I'd realized how wrong my approach and perspective had been, he said, "I've accepted a job I don't want and will hate because you convinced me my preferences were inadequate and wrong. I'll be working 65 hours per week minimum. I have no passion for. That's the permanent legacy of our marriage. Maybe in a few years I'll quit and find something I actually enjoy again. But right now, I'm just exhausted from everything. Don't want to also do the emotional work of rebuilding a marriage with someone who spent years making me feel insufficient as a partner." This conversation ended any hope of reconciliation. Eric was done with our marriage, and I had to accept full responsibility. Divorce was finalized 4 months later. Eric stayed in the senior analyst role. He hated out of pride and not wanting to prove me right. Mutual friends told me he looked exhausted and stressed constantly. No longer the relaxed content person he'd been before. Felt terrible guilt that my pushing had resulted in him being miserable in a career he'd never wanted and losing our marriage. 6 months after divorce, ran into Eric's former colleague at a networking event who asked how he was doing in new role. I said we divorced, and I didn't really know how he was doing in new role and new life without me. She said it's a shame what happened. Eric was the best analyst I ever worked with directly. Everyone loved working with him specifically. He was so good at maintaining team morale and a reasonable work pace. Rare quality in this high-pressure industry. When he left for a senior role elsewhere, we got a manager who burns everyone out constantly. Turnover is absolutely terrible now. Made me realize Eric had been successful in ways I'd never valued or appreciated. Just not successful by my narrow definition. His team loved him. He'd been happy. He'd had a work-life balance I claimed to value as feminist, but I'd pushed him to abandon all of that to match my idea of an ambitious, successful partner who climbed the corporate ladder year after divorce. Eric quit senior analyst role and took a 6-month sabbatical to figure out what he actually wanted from life. Heard through mutual friends he was traveling internationally and seemed lighter and happier than he'd been in years. Was teaching English abroad and dating someone who apparently appreciated him for who he was without trying to change him. Felt a complex mix of sadness that he'd found happiness after leaving me and shame about my role and his unhappiness during marriage. Started doing deep work in therapy about why I'd been so controlling about Eric's career choices and advancement. The therapist helped me see I tied my worth to professional achievement and needed a partner who validated that completely. Eric's contentment threatened my worldview that constant striving and advancement were necessary for worth and success. If he could be happy and worthy while staying at the same level, what did that say about my constant exhausting striving? Easier to make him wrong and push him to change than to question whether my values were serving me well. This realization was devastating, but also liberating in some ways. Started examining my own relationship with work and ambition. Was I happy, constantly striving and never content? Or was I driven by insecurity and need to prove worth through achievement? Did I actually enjoy my director role? Or was I just addicted to advancement and achievement regardless of personal cost? Started setting better boundaries at work and trying to find contentment in the present rather than always pushing for next-level promotion. 2 years after divorce, Eric returned from sabbatical and took a mid-level analyst role at a different company with better culture. He'd specifically chosen a position with good work-life balance and team he was excited to develop and work with daily. He was in a serious relationship with a woman he'd met while traveling who was a teacher and shared his values about quality of life. They apparently both valued quality of life over career advancement. Were planning life around experiences, not titles or promotions. Felt genuinely happy for him while also mourning what I destroyed by not accepting those values in him during marriage. posted on Feminist forum about what I'd learned from divorce. How I'd been wrong to impose my values on Eric. I've got a very different response than previous posts. Many women relate to learning this lesson the hard way in their own relationships. One woman said, "I did a similar thing to my ex-husband. Couldn't accept that he was happy in his career teaching high school. Pushed him to pursue administration because that was advancement. The relationship ended. He's happier now without my constant pressure." Another said, "Reading your story helped me realize I'm doing this to my current partner before it's too late to save the relationship. He's happy with his high school teacher. But I keep pushing him to pursue administration because that's advancement and higher salary. But he loves teaching and doesn't want to leave the classroom. I need to accept his values, not impose mine on his career." Some women criticized me for admitting I'd been wrong. Said I was reinforcing idea that women should accept less from partners, that I'd had a right to expect husband who matched my ambition and he'd failed to meet reasonable standard for equal partnership. But more women appreciated honest reflection about how equal partnership doesn't mean identical values or career ambitions, started speaking about experience at relationship workshops about defining equality and partnership beyond career metrics. Main message was that equality isn't both people having identical career ambitions and definitions of success. It's both people's values and preferences being respected and treated as equally valid in a relationship, that trying to force a partner to adopt your values and priorities isn't creating equality, it's seeking control over them. 3 years after divorce was dating again, being much more mindful about accepting people as they were without trying to change them. I went on several dates with a high-achieving man who seemed a perfect match for my professional ambition and drive, but realized after a few months that I was still measuring worth by career metrics and missing the bigger picture about partnership. Started dating a teacher named Marcus, who was content in his role and passionate about his students and their development. I felt an old instinct to push him toward administration or other advancement to match my director-level status and salary, but caught myself and instead asked him what he loved about teaching and what his goals were for his career. He lit up talking about wanting to develop a better curriculum and mentor new teachers' goals at the same level. Not advancement-focused. In the past, I would have seen this as lack of ambition. Now I saw it as a person with clear values and genuine contentment. We dated for a year, and the relationship was healthier than my marriage had ever been with Eric before I ruined it. He supported my career ambition, while I supported his passion for teaching. Neither is trying to change the other, fundamentally. He didn't feel inadequate because I had a higher status job. I didn't feel held back by his contentment with teaching career. We both brought different strengths and values to partnership that complemented rather than competed with each other. 4 years after divorce, Eric got engaged to the woman he'd met during sabbatical travels abroad. A mutual friend showed me an engagement announcement and said they seemed genuinely happy and, well, matched as a couple. She was an elementary school teacher who valued work-life balance and experiences over career climbing and status. They were planning a modest wedding and honeymoon, focused on adventure travel, not expensive luxury, or showing off. Felt truly happy for Eric, while also grieving a younger version of myself who couldn't accept this in him during marriage. If I'd been able to value his contentment and quality of life priorities, we might still be happily married today. Instead, I'd pushed him to be miserable, pursuing advancement that matches my values, not his actual preferences. Wrote a long letter to Eric, apologizing for years of making him feel inadequate for being content with his career. Acknowledged that his values had been valid all along, and my pushing had been about my insecurity, not his inadequacy. Said I was genuinely happy he'd found a partner who appreciated him for who he was, not who she wanted him to be. He responded briefly, saying he appreciated the apology and had found peace with how things ended between us. That therapy had helped him understand marriage had been unhealthy for him long before the intimacy ultimatum I'd given, that he'd been sacrificing his own values, trying to meet my standards, and losing himself in the process over years. That divorce had been difficult, but ultimately freed him to find a partner who accepted, rather than try to change him fundamentally, wish me well in my own journey of learning what actually mattered in life and partnership beyond career achievement. This response was gracious, but made clear he'd moved on completely from our marriage, which I had to accept as fair. 5 years after divorce, Marcus proposed and I said yes. Having learned so much about what partnership actually meant, it wasn't about both people having identical ambitions or career trajectories or definitions of success. It was about mutual respect for different values, and both people feeling accepted for who they authentically were. Marcus would stay a teacher his whole career, and I fully supported that because he was doing work he loved passionately. I'd recently turned down a promotion to VP because the role would require sacrificing work-life balance I'd learned to value. Old me would have taken it automatically. New May could choose based on what actually mattered to me personally. Started doing workshops about learning from failed first marriage and what equal partnership really meant in practice. Shared story of pushing Eric toward promotion he didn't want and losing marriage and process of trying to control him. The main lesson was that equality doesn't require identical paths. It requires equal respect for different paths people choose. Trying to force a partner to match your values and ambitions isn't creating equality. It's destroying partnership. That accepting someone else's definition of success and contentment is harder but more important than imposing yours. Workshop participants consistently said this challenged their assumptions about what they should expect from partners. One woman said, "I've been upset that my boyfriend won't pursue management, but he loves being an individual contributor. Your story helped me see I was measuring his worth by my values, not respecting his own choices and preferences." Another said, "I almost left my wife because she wasn't ambitious enough by my standards. Now I see, the problem was my standards." 6 years after divorce and 2 years into marriage, with Marcus reflected on the journey from controlling to accepting. Old me had been so certain that equal partnership required Eric to match my career drive and ambition exactly. Had made intimacy and acceptance conditional on him pursuing advancement he never wanted and would make him miserable. Had treated his contentment as character flaw and his different values as inadequacy that needed to be fixed. Result was divorce. Eric being miserable in role he'd never wanted. And years of regret about what I destroyed. Me understood that equality meant respecting different definitions of success and paths to fulfillment, that Marcus being content as teacher didn't make him less of partner than if he pursued administration, that people could contribute equally to relationships while having completely different career values and ambitions. Most importantly, that love should be unconditional acceptance, not contingent on arbitrary achievement standards. Recently, Eric and his wife had their first baby, saw announcement on social media through mutual friends we still shared. He'd scaled back to a part-time analyst role to be primary caregiver while wife continued teaching full-time. This choice would have horrified old me. Seeing it as regression and lack of ambition and drive, now I saw it as a person living according to his values and building life that brought him joy and fulfillment. Felt genuine happiness for him and gratitude that he'd been brave enough to leave a marriage that wasn't serving him. If he'd stayed, we'd both be miserable. Him and the role he hated, and me never learning these crucial lessons about partnership. Current reflections 7 years after saying no intimacy till you get raise, and Eric using raise to pay divorce lawyer. Learned that withholding intimacy to control partners' career choices was manipulative and abusive, not feminist empowerment. That equal partnership means equal respect for different values, not requirement that both people want same things. That accepting someone's contentment and different definition of success is harder but more important than pushing them to change. That measuring partners' worth by career advancement rather than character and values destroyed my marriage completely. Most importantly, that he'd been right to leave marriage where acceptance was conditional on changing fundamental values. That's what I learned from withholding intimacy until he got raised and being devastated when Ray paid for divorce lawyer. From thinking I was pushing him to be equal to realizing I was trying to control him to be like me. From measuring partnership by career achievement to valuing mutual acceptance and respect for different paths. That's my complete story about learning the hard way that equality doesn't mean sameness in marriage or partnership. 7 years after divorce, continued doing relationship workshops, teaching about lessons from failed marriage. Most powerful feedback came from people who recognized themselves in my story before it was too late. One workshop participant said she'd been planning to give husband an ultimatum about getting a promotion, or else, after hearing my story, she realized she was repeating the exact same controlling pattern that destroyed my marriage. Decided to have an honest conversation about what they both wanted, instead of forcing her values on him. Another participant said he'd experienced a similar ultimatum from a girlfriend who withheld affection until he got raise. He'd gotten raised, then immediately broke up with her because he realized the relationship was transactional. Not loving. My story validated his decision that leaving was the right choice, even though girlfriend claimed she just wanted the best for him. 8 years after divorce, published a book about experience titled, When Love Becomes Conditional Lessons from My Failed Marriage. A detailed, complete journey from withholding intimacy to Eric getting promotion to him using raise to pay divorce lawyer. Books resonated with people on both sides. Those who'd been controllers and those who'd been controlled. One reviewer wrote, "This book should be read by anyone who thinks they can force partners to change through ultimatums." Another writer's honesty about her mistakes provides a roadmap for recognizing controlling behavior in relationships. Current reflection, 8 years after withholding intimacy, and watching Eric use promotion to fund his freedom, learned that trying to control a partner through ultimatums destroys love, even if you get compliance. That Eric getting the promotion I demanded, then using it to leave me, was poetic justice I'd earned. That real partnership means accepting people as they are, not forcing them to become who you want. That's everything I learned from saying no intimacy till you get a raise, and being devastated to pay for divorce lawyer.